Hello. You are probably familiar with Kayla from Books and Lala. Kayla from Books and Lala read a couple of books that she did in a vlog. Her vlogs are always so fun. She wanted to see if you could recommend books based on somebody's zodiac sign. She's an Aries. I'm a Leo. My birthday's in 2 weeks. She had like varying success with this, and so did I. I used her resources. I read 7, I think, books. I have a new favorite book and a bunch of books I didn't really enjoy very much. So here are the 25 books, first of all, that were recommended for Leos. First of all, Madeline, like the Madeline books, thought they were very cute, but they also kind of freaked me out the way lots of little kid stuff did. The next book was Queen of Air and Fire by Cassandra Clare, which I don't think is the first book in a series, so I didn't read it. The third book is Tradition by Brendan Keeley. I did read this one. Ace of Shadows by Amanda Foody, didn't read it. The Brightsiders by Jen Wilde, didn't read it. What by Cindy Pon, didn't read it. Over the Top by Jonathan Van Ness. Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, did read it. Cruel Beauty by Rosamund Hodge. Something Strange and Deadly by Susan Dennard. The Jewel by Amy Ewing, did read it. A Wicked Thing by Rhiannon Thomas. The Selection by Kira Cass. The Lux by Anna Godberson, I read the first one. Once and Future by Amy Rose Capetta and Corey McCarthy, read it. Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court by Mark Twain, read it. White Elephant by Julie Langsdorff. The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta, did read that one. Darius the Great is Not Okay by Adib Karaman. The Great Gatsby by Scott Fitzgerald. I didn't read it recently, but I have read it. Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan, which I read the whole series last summer. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl. Loved that one. Didn't read it recently. City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert. Read it. I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. Read it. And Just Kids by Patti Smith, which I started to read and is now on hold for the next 8 weeks from my library. So, meant to read it, didn't finish it. I'll start with Just Kids, which I did obviously not finish, which is what I just said, but I was starting to read it. I don't really know who Patti Smith is. I know she's like a rock star, that I've heard some of her music before, but I started listening to her music, and I am going to read this memoir. She has another memoir too. It has to be on pause. I have other things I wanted to read. I read I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson, which I gave 5 stars. I explained this in my Reading Rush vlog. But this is like the book that I wanted to read. It's about Jude and Noah, who are twins, and when they are 14, something bad happens to them and they are split, not like actually split apart, but they have a rift in their relationship. They're both young artists. Jude is like a sculptor and Noah is a illustrator, a drawer, a painter. They have to repair the relationship. Well, they don't have to. There's not like an outside thing that's trying to repair their relationship, but they're both, basically, I don't know how to explain it without giving away, but like they're in switched positions from the way they are at the beginning when we go to the time when they're 16. So Noah is telling the story of when they're 13 and 14. Basically, he has dominion over the past, and Jude has dominion over the present. It's such a touching story about just these two artsy kids trying to understand themselves and their place in the world. It's such a beautiful, like I sobbed the entire way through it. It has all of the elements that I want to bring into my writing: convoluted storytelling techniques, left-handed main characters, human sexuality, ghosts, art metaphors that make most reviewers really upset. I love it. Like it's the perfect book. It's literally the perfect book. I say that all the time. Nope, this is it. The perfect book. I cannot recommend this book enough to people who are me. If I were to say this book's perfect audience it's me. I'm the perfect audience for this book. I actually have 0 criticisms of this. That's not actually true. I do have one criticism, and it's that I wish the book had ended like 40 pages before it did. City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert, I gave 3 stars. It is a book told in a letter. It is about Vivian, whose last name I cannot remember. He is a young woman coming of age in New York City in 1941. She ends up at her lesbian aunt's house. Apartment, and she helps put on this like very successful show. The first like 70% of the novel is about this one summer that she spends in New York, but the storytelling is so convoluted and ridiculous. I know I just praised I'll Give You the Sun for the convoluted storytelling, but it like worked, like it did something. Like this storytelling technique in I'll Give You the Sun did something, whereas I think this book would have been better if it stopped at like the 70% mark, or even if it did tell like her whole life story, because like it tells their story until she's like in her 70s or 80s, that like it didn't need to be told the way it did. It's told in a letter to a character's daughter who appears, and the daughter appears, but the character whose daughter this is, he appears at like 70%. I like, what do I do with that information? It was very frustrating. Also though, I listened to it on audiobook. Not a great move for me, somebody who doesn't enjoy audiobooks. And so I feel like when I listen to things on audiobooks, I get more bogged down by the prose than I do when I read them with my own two eyes. This one gets really good reviews, and I think it gets good reviews for being literary historical fiction, but it kind of was heavy. It was too dense, and it wasn't literary at all. What did I learn from reading this book? Nothing. I read The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta, which may or may not be written in verse. It's very hard to say because I listened to it. If it's not written in verse, it is certainly written very lyrically, and it's written in like vignettes, which I think was a very strong choice. I liked it, and it covers basically the main character's whole life. He is gay, black, and British. He like goes to college and he joins like a drag club, and he's like finding his identity. I think that this is not a book that I enjoyed very much. It didn't really do very much for me. I am a college graduate and I'm not black or British. While I'm not like straight, I don't necessarily get a lot out of like coming of age stories of people like trying to figure out their sexuality and like reconciling that with like other parts of their identity as much as like lots of other LGBT people. So I don't think it's completely invaluable. It just wasn't very valuable to me. Also, I don't like drag. Lots of things about this book that I think would be really fun for lots of other people. Like I think it's a really good book. I really technically gave it 3.5 stars. But just like not for me. I read A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court by Mark Twain, which I wanted to read anyway. And I don't remember how many stars I gave this. 3, 4, deeply weird. This is about a Connecticut Yankee, and he like gets into a fight at his factory, and he gets knocked out, and he wakes up in King Arthur's Britain, and he tricks everybody there into thinking that he's a wizard so that he can like take over. He wants to bring 19th century America to 6th century Britain. It turns funny, it turns philosophical, deeply like abolitionist, although technically this was written after the Civil War was over. I liked it, but I did not understand it. I recently read the Blade Runner book. I have never understood a work of literature less than I've understood A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. Speaking of King Arthur, I read Once and Future by Amy Rose Capetta and Corey McCarthy, which I gave 2 stars. Also, keep in mind, I listened to it on audiobook. The reviews for this are quite bad. It promises a lot. It is a King Arthur retelling. The main character, Ari, is a Arthur reincarnation, and she's a girl. She's 16. Actually, I have far more questions about this book than I have about A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, in spite of the way I've never understood a work of literature less than King Arthur's, the one by Mark Twain, the great work of American literature. Literally nothing in this book matters. They're in space. It's King Arthur but in space, and then there's like a whole planet that's like medieval times. The prose is bad, the characters are weak, nobody's relationships with each other make any sense, I would say, except for maybe Merlin and the guy that he's with, but it also feels kind of forced, although, well, I've seen Merlin. Anyway, I read The Lux by Anna Godberson, the first book, which is apparently a series of books, and it's kind of like shallow, trashy, I don't know. Okay, so here we are, turn of the century, New York, and we have a main character, and her name escapes me, Elizabeth. I think I chose the wrong books on this list to read. Not like I didn't understand any of the characters, not a single one. And basically the book opens with her funeral, right? She has been supposed to be married, recently married somebody, and it's her funeral. And can I tell you, you can guess the ending of this book right now. You would be right. Also, I started referring to it as much doing. You getting much adoed, being much adoed. If you're gonna be talking about a character being much adoed in reference to Shakespeare's pivotal work, Much Ado, Much Ado About Nothing, I've decided you should not use it to refer to faking your death to get out of the horrors of people thinking you're a little slut, but instead having people pretend that somebody said something nice about them in private when you're not paying attention, fixing people up, but in a convoluted manner. That's what I mean to say. That should be called being referred to as being much adoed, instead of the other thing that I referred to as being much adoed, which is faking your death to avoid being called a slut. Oh my god, I don't even know what I'm talking about. No, like, no to this one. I think people can like it if they just like fun romance stories, but I was missing the romance and I was missing the fun, so no, that's a no for me. 2 stars. I read The Jewel by Amy Ewing, which I think I give 4 stars. This is about a young girl. She's 16, I think, and her name is Violet. She has purple eyes. That is just like a fun little science fiction character trait that she has. She has purple eyes. It is the romance version of The Hunger Games plus the 3/4 of The Handmaid's Tale that I read. Girls in the lowest circle of this lone city sometimes are born with genetic abnormalities that allow them to like do alchemy. They have magic powers. This is not explained, and nor do I care. I genuinely really enjoyed this book. I don't know why. I can't tell you. Sometimes books, they just speak to me, and this was one of them. So she and her best friend they've gone to school to learn how to perform the auguries, which will allow them to carry the children of the rich people in the Jewel, which is the richest part and the royalty part of the city. And not explaining this book very well, but they have an auction. They're basically slaves, but they're called surrogates. I mean, they are slaves. They're not basically slaves, they're slaves, but they don't care about like what they do. They just want them to carry their children for them. This book was crazy. Unlike the other book that I was just talking about, these characters are human people. Like, I don't think Violet has any like standout personality traits except for her purple eyes, but like she's just like a girl. They, male and the female characters, they have chemistry with one another. These are just some things I look for, but the world is kind of big and interesting, and it promises to get more interesting. And I think my favorite thing about this book was how nuanced the villains were, because there are certainly villains in this book, and I think they're very interesting and nuanced, and they're full human beings too. The last one, oh my god, I read this so long ago. Tradition by Brandon Keeley is a book that I gave 2 stars. I also listened to it on audiobook. There is a trend here. Do not let me do book recommendations if I'm not going to read them. This is not something I really expect I would have liked even if I had read it. It is about a football player who, for reasons that become pretty obvious pretty early on, did not finish his senior year of high school, and so is now going to a very prestigious boarding school to finish his senior year of high school, and some girl who is supposed to be a feminist but is annoying. And I know annoying feminists, I promise, but most feminists aren't. they are coming together and they're fighting the patriarchy and learning things, except for Jules. She learns nothing, I think, except that people are bad. Don't know about that as a lesson in a YA book. Don't particularly like it, but again, YA is not super ever worked for me. I read Pride and Prejudice, which is also on this list, which I somehow think I missed, which I also gave 4 stars. And Pride and Prejudice, incredible. Why didn't I read it before now? Pride and Prejudice is a book that has intimidated me for a very long time. And it intimidated me because there's a lot to it. I thought it would be boring because I've read classics, and it's about 50-50 for me with classics. Literature students read Jane Austen every day and they're like, I love Jane Austen. But I have also read terrible classics. So half the time classics are riveting and they're important and they're the fabric of our pop culture. And other times they're long and expository, and they make your brain hurt, and they're to tell you about something about the world. Pride and Prejudice does that. Pride and Prejudice makes you examine both your prides and your prejudices. But at the end of the day, you got a very fun cast of characters who are all crazy and lovable. Every single one of them. Name me one character in Pride and Prejudice who isn't fun. There are 0 of them. That's it. Every single thing about Pride and Prejudice is good. Okay? I gave 4 stars. Not a life-changing book, but certainly great. So can you read based on your zodiac sign? No. This has proved it once and for all. You cannot. Things will be recommended to you that are good because they're good books, and things will be recommended to you that just don't make any sense. Anyway, this was fun though, to like pick random books that I wouldn't normally have read. Like I never would have picked up I'll Give You the Sun if I hadn't planned on doing this, and probably my favorite book I've read in 2020, and probably will be my favorite book that I read in 2020 the whole year. So that's all folks. But anyway, I'll see you soon for a Shakespeare video. This time, I promise, I'm serious about it this time. I'm 100% serious. I'm doing it. I'm doing Coriolanus. Okay, get ready for Coriolanus. Fuck yeah, bye.